All right, let's go to this now. Cases of abuse and violence against men and boys often remain underreported. Now, the South African male survivors of sexual abuse says 1 in 6 adult males in the country has been a victim of sexual offences. Internationally, you may be familiar with the Menendez brothers who are fighting for their release. Now, the brothers do not dispute the fact that they killed their parents, but they say that they did this in self-defense, as they argue that they endured years of sexual, emotional and physical abuse at the hands of those they trusted. Now, as the country marks 16 days of activism of no violence against women and children, is the plight of men being considered? Gary Da Silva, Fathers for Justice South Africa chairperson, and Graham Dewar, who is a Fathers' Right movement advocating for equal parenting through organizations called PACE 50/50, join us to have this conversation. Good evening to you both, and thank you so much for your time. I'm going to start with you, Graham. Many men and boys are suffering in silence, and their stories rarely make headlines. Why is this, in your view?
So there's a number of things, but if you think about just a common phrase, take it like a man or man up, what does it mean? It means accept your suffering and stop complaining. So what that means is that we are brought up to think that no one's going to listen to us. In fact, it's our place to endure that in silence. And so the consequence of that, men are brought up to think that no one is interested. And if you look at what happens in society, let's take, for example, I'll talk of somebody without using names, but I know of a specific man who went to the police who'd been violently abused by his partner at the time. She'd stabbed him, and the police told him that he's pathetic. How can a woman beat him up? So that's the kind of reaction you get. If you go to the police station as a man and you want support, you don't get it. And you don't get it from male policemen any more than you get it from female policemen. It's not that one gender in the police service is taking sides. It's not that at all. It's a societal thing. If you look. Yeah, okay, let me stop there.
Pardon me, Graham. Gary, let me come to you right on that point. How disturbing is it for us to hear that in 2024, you still are finding men who are struggling to get assistance when they go to the police station, for example, to report a crime that has been committed against them?
It's a common practice, and you know, we are not supported as men out there. I mean, like if you go into a police station, there is always a separate area for women to go and lay complaints. And if the case is of such a severe nature, they get taken into other rooms. But men get chased away, and it's a common practice. Things around like collection of children on a Friday afternoon when there is a court order. Guys go to police stations and ask for support from the police. They get chased away. They say it's not the responsibility of the police to help them. The fact that you're being in contravention of a court order is a criminal offence doesn't seem to occur to them. So if you take a look at around mental health for men, I mean, like men experience suicide at a far higher rate than women. We are not supported. Depending on where you are in the world, you're looking at 85 to 95% of homeless people are men. You know, where is the support for them? You know, the unemployment rate in South Africa, those that are still currently looking for work but are unemployed sit at 32%. You look at those that have given up work sits at an additional 30+%, and those came out of statistics earlier this year. So 62% of our population are unemployed. How do you expect fathers fathers and men to provide and to protect their families? They're not.
And Gary, pardon me for coming in there, right on that point, when they're not able to provide, how much of abuse are they then having to stomach because of this very reality?
So, Bongiwe, I deal with probably 10, 15 dads a day easily, and it's the common thing is that these fathers are struggling to provide. They have got maintenance orders that are not based in any form of reality. and they're struggling to provide. There's a misconception that if I don't have contact with my children, I don't have to pay maintenance, which is a criminal offence in itself. So there's such massive issues around this, and men are forced into crime. Sorry, excuse me, to provide for themselves. And is it right? No, absolutely no, it isn't. But we have an economy in South Africa that is not geared towards getting the maximum amount of people employed in South Africa. And how do you expect a father that looks at these starving children not to respond if he can't afford to buy? What is he going to do? He's going to steal. He's going to commit crime. And then we all sit back, stunned and amazed as a society. Why is this father doing this?
Yeah, and Graham, to bring you back into this conversation, to your earlier point about a man who had to find himself at a police station, and he's not alone. I mean, there's a number of them who get there and they're told these harrowing stories. What does it do to them mentally if they get there and they cannot get help? Because in some instances, they're even afraid to tell the families what's going on behind closed doors.
So there's a complete lack of support for men in the way that there's a support for women. That is a society-wide problem. You know, men don't believe that anyone's listening. That's really the bottom line. We don't talk because we know when we do talk, you're mocked. You know, you're so pathetic. You're so weak. What's wrong with you? Or you're told, just stop complaining. You know, you'll get a situation where, just to pick up on Gary's thing, right? When you look at maintenance payments, when a father can't afford to pay and he gets charged with contravention of his Maintenance Act, and he gets found guilty, he is criminalized for being a poor father. So when you don't have money as a father, you become a criminal. How ridiculous is that?
And at the same time. And at the same time, as Gary says, that in some of these cases, Graham, the conditions are so stringent that they even cannot be met in some of these cases.
Well, exactly. I mean, I can talk of fathers who are virtually bankrupt, fighting to be fathers in their children's lives. And the Minister of Social Development came out and said, we're suffering from a fatherless society. But when you look at what the courts are doing in South Africa, when both parents have gone to court to fight to have custody of the child, so both parents are fighting to be involved in the child's life, right? But when you look at the judgments that are made, fathers get less than 7% of custody awarded. Most of the time, it's the single mother or the mother with a new partner, and that's over 60% of the awards. Another 15% goes to grandparents. Another 7.5% goes to places of safety. Fathers are last in the queue. There's a Children's Act that says children are entitled to equal access to both parents, and parents are equally entitled to access to their children. But that's not what actually happens.
Sure.
When you look at the statistics, it's nothing like that. And now what happens
Pardon me, you'll come in there just now.
So when you look at these statistics, they're horrifying. But when you look at, so now you're a father fighting for your child, and you get accused of wrongdoing. Now the state prosecutes you, but you have to fund your defense. And if that accusation is found to be false, there's no money paid back to you. There's no consequences for the person who made false accusations, although there is a law against that. It's never used. And so the father ends up destitute, trying to be a father, and then criticized for not being present in the child's life.
Gary, you wanted to come in there.
So let's just flip this on the head. So, around fatherlessness. Okay, so research has been done across South Africa about the raping of boys. Okay, so now there was a recent, and I can provide the statistics of this. I mean, like it's in my, I can provide it. But anyway, 41% of boys between the age of 11 and 19 are raped by women. There was research done some years ago by the University of the Western. Anyway, it was done by a university. I'll get the name for you. Where they said that 41% of boys are raped by women, and between 12% of boys are raped by both men and women. So 52% of rapes in the Western Cape are perpetrated by women against boys. Okay, what was the main issue or criteria to say that why these boys are being raped and molested was because of an absentee father? Okay. The issue, I deal with a huge problem, and I don't know whether this is a cultural or as a result of migrant labor during the 17th, 18th, and 19th century when fathers migrated from the rural areas into the likes of Gauteng. But I speak to so many black fathers on a daily basis where the mother has just taken the child to the grandmother and dumped the child at the grandmother. He doesn't have a chance to do anything about saying, well, let the child come and stay with me. That is both a cultural and a residual part of the old legacy of migrationary thing, where the children were invariably left with the grandparents when both parents came to what was the old Witwatersrand. And that is still practiced today, but yet we want to shout and scream at black fathers who make up the vast majority of absentee fathers. Throw into that a collapsed education system, a collapsed economy. And then we sit back, and I say this again and again, we as a society sit stunned and amazed as to why we have so many absentee fathers. There's research that came out of the US. 40% of mothers have admitted to actively interfering in the continued contact with the child and the father. An additional, this was other research that was done, 50% of mothers see no value in the father's continued relationship with the children post-divorce or separation. So, and then we go back and we say, where are the men? Where are the fathers? The Department of Social Development, both Graham and I, for the last 5 years have been engaging the Department of Social Development, begging them to come and to please engage us properly. We've presented to Parliament, and we've told them the issues. We welcome the new portfolio committee member for the Department of Social Development, Mrs. Mangwasa, who was reappointed. She acknowledged the receipt of my letter. She acknowledged the receipt that there's an issue around fathers and the issues related to fathers. Okay. And that was the last time. I begged to engage with the Department of Social Development, the new minister, and the Department of the deputy minister. We have yet to have a response.
Gary, before I let both of you go, I'm going to ask you this, especially because you say that you've spoken to some of the fathers and you've given us the reasons, but there are some fathers as well who say that they make the choice not to get involved in their children's lives. And some of them, yes, while you highlight the one part, there are others who simply just possibly don't want to. And what reasons are they giving you?
Can I answer that? Can I answer that? Between 6 and 7% of fathers can be considered the true definition of the deadbeat father. 6 to 7%. The others are economic, law, education, the ability to find proper employment, and a highly misandrous, gynocentric justice system that removes, on average, 91% of fathers out of the children's lives. And that was admitted by the previous minister, Lindiwe Sisulu, in 2021 on the 16th of June, and that was also admitted by the Family Advocate's Office in the Van Ginkel Low case at the Equality Court, that in 91 to 93% of the cases, the children are automatically awarded to the mother. So, do we acknowledge that there are deadbeat fathers? Absolutely, 100%. They sit at 6 to 7%. There are other issues. The economy, education, a justice system that seeks out to destroy, sever, and alienate children from the fathers. False allegations. We are led to believe that 52% of all protection orders issued in South Africa, and I stand under correction, but it sits at 52%. Justice Insiders tell us that figure is way north of that. What is the standard thing that I deal with on a daily basis? False allegations have been made against the father, and they are advised by lawyers. How do we know that? Because mothers have told me that's what lawyers advise them to do if they want to get the father out of the children's lives. So, and that father can spend upwards of anything between 18 months and 2 years trying to have those false allegations overturned. And guess what? Nothing happens to the mother and or the lawyer.
So, yeah, I think we really need a wider conversation here on this. Graham, let me give you the final bite here briefly. How do we begin to support the men and the boys?
So one of the first things we need to do is we talk about gender equality in South Africa. But if we're going to have gender equality in South Africa, we also need to recognize that men are equally worthy of compassion and care, that they should be considered equal citizens and get equal attention from the government. So when you go to homeless shelters, if there are 50 homeless shelters for a single woman, there should be 50 homeless shelters for single men. In fact, if you look at the majority of homeless people, it's men. And yet the majority of shelters are not for men. So resources need to be allocated equally, but we also need to start with this idea that equality does not mean revenge for perceived slights of the past. If we're going to build a better society, we need to have a society where we treat each other as equals. But that means equal, not I'm on top of you and I'm going to oppress you now. Yeah. That's what's got to change. And in the family law and specifically, there's a failure to recognize by government that a child who grows up in a fatherless home is in a very, very bad state. The research shows that the majority of children who grow up in a fatherless home underperform academically, become antisocial as teenagers, are much more likely to get involved in crime, are much more likely to drop out of school. What are the problems we're facing in South Africa? Aren't those the very issues we're struggling to solve? And the answer is it's fatherlessness. So then you need to make sure that the relationship between the child and the father is maintained. Yeah. It's illegal to withhold maintenance, but there's no equal attempt to ensure that the relationship between a child and a father is maintained. When people are together, the father's interested in the child. When they separate, all of a sudden the father's not interested. Really? There must be something else going on there. Surely.
Gentlemen, let me thank you both for your time. And as both of you have really just, really shown us this evening that we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of this particular conversation. But let me thank you both for your time and for really getting us started on this conversation. That's Gary Da Silva, Fathers for Justice, South Africa chairperson, and Graham Dewar, who is Fathers' Right Movement, advocating for equal parenting through an organization called PACE 50/50.